All right, so what I have here is actually two very short pieces. The first, I think you'll know pretty quickly, is fiction. And the second is actually a very short piece of nonfiction. So the first is called The Rainforest. The transformation of the tiny house began when she felt a raindrop smack her head in the middle of the living room. Of course, she would realize later that the transformation started long before, so it would be more accurate to say that she first noticed the transformation the day she felt a raindrop smack her head in the middle of the living room. Then on her shoulder, then again on her head, then her cheek. A leaking roof, she thought, and added that to her long mental list of things she hated about the house. The sun porch that served as the master bedroom, the galley kitchen only large enough to accommodate one cooking adult at a time, the lack of a dishwasher, the way the afternoon sun missed the tiny windows altogether, bringing evening all too early to her living room. Another raindrop splattered, this time on her big toe. Looking down, she noticed that mushrooms and toadstools had sprung up around her feet without her even realizing it. Had they always been there? And when had her carpet become moss and leaf litter? The large mirror that had hung opposite the couch for 7 years crashed to the floor, throwing off splintered light. That's when she noticed that the wall appeared to be melting. She touched it, and it clumped and fell away like wet papier-mâché. A wall of dense green leaves materialized in its place. A thick tree root erupted out of the carpet under her feet. The rain fell all around her. The sudden soaking startled her like a slap to the face, like waking up from that dream where she was falling. "Dear," she said, calling to her husband, "it's raining in the house." "It's okay," he answered from the recliner. His voice was slow, his words drawn out. He pushed his glasses up his nose. He could not be counted on to help. She ran to the tiny kitchen to seek shelter, but vines were overtaking the refrigerator. The cracked vinyl counters were sprouting saplings. A line of army ants trekked across the cabinet doors, carrying a struggling grub. She backed down the hall toward the two closet-sized bedrooms. Black mold crept up the door jambs. Bright orange fungal half-moons sprouted in stair-step patterns up the doors. In one bedroom, a family of fruit bats hung from the ceiling, or what had been a ceiling, and was just now a mosaic of tree branches and a large, light-blocking leaves. The bats stirred in their grotto. One glanced at her before tucking its head back under its wing. In the other bedroom, she was greeted by a swarm of mosquitoes, and she worried for the first time in her life about yellow fever. She was afraid to peek into the bathroom when she saw a posse of river crocodiles exit and head for the kitchen, but she needed to see what the room had become. Piranhas swam and snapped in the tub, the porcelain turning to a sandy shore. Leeches crowded the sink, making squishy, sucking sounds that made her think of sloppy, drunken kisses. They crawled and sucked their way up the mirror. With a splash, a giant otter popped up from the toilet, chewing on a slug, snorting and humming over its meal. A thick, fat snake coiled around what had been the shower curtain rod, which now resembled a tree branch. It raised its head to her, and she backed quickly out of the bathroom and shut the door tight. Back in the hallway, brightly colored poison arrow frogs leapt around her like technicolored gnats. Spiders, as she was sure were poisonous, stretched their webs above her head. From the sunroom, she heard the scream of a jaguar. Calmly, she called to her husband. "I think it's time to go." But when she found him in the living room, he was not her husband. He was a three-toed sloth, and he liked the rainforest, the dank and the wet and the mold, the smell of mildew and sweat. Without a word, he curled his claws around the tree branch that suddenly stretched across the space above them and climbed up into the ceiling canopy. He left his glasses behind on the recliner, which was now a rock. It was then that she realized the transformation of her house and her husband had been going on for some time, but she had ignored the clues, the strange tufts of grass that appeared in the carpet, the increased hairiness of his face, the blackening of his fingernails. She had not even been conscious of these changes, so deep had been her denial. Oh, sure, she saw them, but she didn't notice them. "Are you staying here?" she asked. It took eons for him to turn his head, to give the slightest of nods. He reached for another, smaller branch with fresh green shoots that had just now sprung to life next to him. He ate. By now she was soaked. "What will I do?" she asked. "Where will I live?" He climbed higher into the network of crisscrossing branches that filled the space where the ceiling used to be. "I'm leaving then. What do you think of that?" "I'm leaving because I'm not going to live like this. I'm going to my mother's. What do you think of that?" He didn't answer. She had said these things before. He only kept working his way up the branch until he was high above her, out of sight, hidden by giant leaves. She let him go, did not try to say goodbye. She grabbed her car keys and left. All right, and this next piece is called "This Hospital Life." I will begin my day while it is still dark, on a creaky cot tucked along the wall in my mother's room in the physical rehabilitation hospital. She will wake sometime after 5 a.m. and need to pee, just as she did sometime after 11, and after 1, and after 3. And I will help her transfer from the bed to the potty chair beside her bed, because if we push the button and wait for the nurse techs, she will wet herself before they arrive. I will stand beside my mother as she has diarrhea in the potty chair, the smell of it pounding my face like a closed fist. She is on a combination of opioid pain medication, a blood thinner to fight clots, which can form after the amputation of a limb, iron pills to increase the amount of hemoglobin in her blood since her oxygen levels are low, due perhaps to the pulmonary contusions caused by the force of her ribs breaking against her lungs, multivitamins, something for gas, perhaps more pills and drips than I am even aware of. Her bowels are in open revolt. I will hold my breath and stare at the corner where 2 walls meet the ceiling, forcing down the gag rising at the back of my mouth. Yesterday, I had to dash across the room to vomit in the sink, and my mother cried and said she was sorry, while I cried and heaved, saying, "No, I'm sorry." I will try not to notice the amount of weight my once obese mother has lost in a week and a half's time, the way her once bulbous skin hangs like wrinkled drapery on her body. I will admit that several days of semi-consciousness in the ICU will do that. The crummy food in the PICU and now the rehab hospital will do that. Getting diarrhea after every meal will do that. I will admit that my own experiences with digestion over the last week and a half confirm it. I will touch my mother's bare bottom, dimpled by age and cellulite, as I help her pull her underwear back over it. We will move her off the potty chair and back on the transfer board, which will balance precariously between the chair and the edge of the bed. I will adjust her underpants, her twisted nightgown, her hospital sock with the rubber tread on her left foot, all while trying not to let my gaze brush against the site of what's now in the potty chair, trying not to knock the various wires connected to her body and the cushion of bandages around the stump just below her right knee, the stump where her lower leg and right foot used to be. It will jerk, and she will giggle and say, "Look out, my ghost foot is tingling." Then I will get my mother situated once more in bed, get myself situated once more in mine. But I will not sleep, kept awake either by my mother, who is in a talkative mood, or by the sounds of a stirring hospital after another long night. I will calculate that if I fall asleep now at 5:30, I can still get 1 hour of sleep before I have to get up and get ready for work. That if I fall asleep now at 5:40, I can get 50 minutes of sleep before I have to get up and get ready for work. I will lay on my cot and tally the effects of a car careening at 60 miles per hour up the wrong side of the road, of a head-on collision with the force to send a woman's right foot through the floorboard of the car before spinning her out on the blacktop, of how very, very tired and skinny we have all gotten during this hospital life.